We're on. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd. Oh, before I start, if you're not receiving the reminders, please come and talk to me. We can add you to the Remind app so you get a text message so you know if there's a halaqah or not. Because sometimes we cancel, and if you're not on it, you may not know, So if you're not on it, please let me know and we can add you, inshallah.
I have the instruction on the website.
Oh, we also have the instructions on the website. If you know what the website is, it should be easy.
Right there on the door.
There you go.
Mass-IZ.org.
Oh, it's almost actually everywhere. Wow. Okay, can't miss it. All right, so inshallah tonight, what I want to talk about is the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, no matter what we do, we have to realize that it is impossible, in fact, to understand or to even imagine the majesty of God. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the Quran something about that, and He's basically addressing everybody. He told us, وَمَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. A short verse, or in fact it's a sub-verse or a part of a verse. He said, they have not realized or estimated the power of Allah. They have not, or they have underestimated the power of Allah. Or they have not given Allah His right due. وَمَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. Because qadr is the value. So they have not valued, they have not estimated Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as they should. So, well, how do we do that? Is it even possible to even understand the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I mean, He's far beyond our senses. He's far beyond reach. And this is important because when we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we see how people worship, most of us. I mean, I'm not pointing fingers, it happens to everybody. When we worship God, when we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our mind wanders. And we think about lowly things, pitiful things, insignificant matters. But if we understood the majesty of Allah, our worship would be much, much, much better. Imagine if you are a small speck. A speck even is too much for us. We don't even deserve to be called a speck. Maybe the earth is a speck. We're so little in the kingdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we understood that, like how little, how insignificant, and how great God is, how great Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, that would help. It might make our worship a little better. Like you can focus more and you can feel the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, that's one thing we can do. There is actually a long hadith. I'm not going to narrate the whole hadith, but it is talking about the angels. Now we know the angels, they worship Allah a little better than we do. In fact, they are very, very good worshippers. The Quran tells us about the worship of the angels. It tells us that they don't stop mentioning Allah. And some of us rarely mention Allah, right? So there is a big, big difference. It says they exalt, they extol Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala non-stop, day and night. La yafturun, they don't stop. And they don't have any pride or arrogance. I mean, at least for some people, the reason they don't worship is because of their pride and arrogance. Not everybody. Yet, in this hadith, they make this exclamation. At the end, they say, Subhanaka ma abadnaka haqqa ibadatik. They say, oh, glory to you, we have not worshipped you the way you should be worshipped. These are the angels who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala non-stop. making that statement that we have not worshipped you the way you should be worshipped. So now, just to appreciate this concept, let's maybe go on a trip. Let's go on a trip in this wide universe. Just to see our size, like let's size ourselves, right? Get a feel of our real size, our true size. Are we who we think we are? Are we this big as we think we are? Well, there are many different ways to look at this. One way, if we think about the number of atoms in this universe. Well, if we take just a pin, the head of a pin has like millions and millions of atoms. Just a pin, a small pin. If you take a human being, they have about 7 times 10 to the 27th atoms. So this is 10 to the 27th power. I don't know if you know math enough. This is like 1 with 27 zeros. This is how many atoms we have, each one of us. That's a big number. I mean, a million is how many zeros? 6. A billion? 9. Trillion? 12. And here we're talking about 27 zeros, not 12 zeros, 27 zeros. This is how many atoms we have, each one of us. Is it possible to know how many atoms the universe has? Yes, scientists claim that they know. But before we do that, how wide is the universe? How big? What is the diameter of the universe? Well, we have an estimate. I mean, this might change, but now, currently, first of all, we cannot measure the diameter or the size of the universe using our day-to-day scale. Like, we cannot use miles or kilometers. That doesn't work. That's too small. So we have to come up with a unit to be able to even measure or even imagine how wide the universe is. And we came up with light years. What does that mean? Well, we know that light is probably the fastest object we know of. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions light in the Quran quite a bit. Light is so interesting, the phenomena of light. It goes so fast. By the time I say Allah, the word Allah, the light would have gone around the earth 8 times. So say Allah, all of us, let's do that. And imagine the light going around the earth 8 times. On a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Allah, 8 times. Can you imagine how fast light is? The sun is like 93 million miles away, I think, something like that. It takes only 8 minutes for the sunlight to reach us. So when we see the sun, like when the sun is setting, it's 8 minutes old. You're not seeing the sun as is, you're seeing it as it was 8 minutes ago. Because why? Because it takes 8 minutes for the sunlight to travel to us. Only 8 minutes between us and the sun. Can you imagine how much the light can travel in a day? What about a week or a year? So a year, this is a light year. How long it takes the light, or how much can it travel in a year? That is how we measure. We call it a light year. The size of the universe is 93 billion light years. I mean, your head should spin. 93 billion light years. This is how wide, at least what we know today. And we call it the visible universe. We don't know what's beyond that. So we're nothing, right? I mean, nothing is even too much for us. So imagine you are, and this is, again, like I said, this is the visible universe. Like people now talk about multiverses and all kinds of stuff. We also know there are 7 heavens, right? And this is all the first heaven. Like as-sama' ad-dunya, the first heaven. So all of this is happening in the first heaven. We don't even understand the other heavens, the 7 heavens, let alone everything else. I mean, the earth is nothing. Now some people refer to it as the blue dot or something like that. It's just a rock, right? We're sitting on a rock in the middle of a vast, vast universe. Most of the matter that makes the universe we don't even understand. Now we call it black matter or black energy. Everything we know of that we could see is only a small, small, small percentage. That includes all the galaxies, all of the planets and stars. So back to the question, how many atoms? Well, the current estimate, the number of atoms in the universe is 10 to the 78. 10 to the 78 power. So imagine 78 zeros. It's actually between 10 to the 78 and 10 to the 82, somewhere in between. So at most, as we know now, it is 1 with 82 zeros. That's how many atoms we have in the universe. It's quite a bit. So just think of this and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ, that people did not understand, do not comprehend the majesty and the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're not joining our circle. You have your own chat room. Please come and join us. And this is why some scholars have made a statement. They have said, لَيْسَ فِي الْإِمْكَانِ أَبْدَعُ مِمَّا كَانَ. I like it, it rhymes. They said it's not possible to have something better than what we have. I know some people, non-Muslims, they don't like that. They think, well, this universe is not perfect, or we're not perfect. But the Muslim scholars have made that statement. And in fact, today we have discovered that there are many, many quantities in this universe that they are perfect. If those quantities were not the way they are, we would not exist. The universe would not exist. I don't want to make it simple. I don't want to make it too complicated. This is not a physics class. Relax. But this is a concept of fine-tuning. The fact that everything in this universe is finely tuned. Like all these numbers, all these quantities are fine-tuned. If the quantity was a little higher or a little lower, we would not exist. This whole universe would not exist. This is actually one of the best ways for proving the existence of God. It's one of the best ways to prove the existence of God. The fact that everything around us is finely, finely tuned. Now again, because we are playing with numbers, I'll just give you one example of that, how finely tuned our universe is. There's something called the cosmological constant. How many of you have heard of this? Only one? Oh. 1.5? 2? Cosmological constant. Huh? You heard someone say it, that's good. Good enough. This constant is so, so small, yet it is so important for the balance of this universe. If that constant was a little different, then gravity would be out of control. This constant actually controls gravity. Because gravity pulls things together, right? And this constant is pulling the other way. All right? And that's how we are in a state of balance, a state of equilibrium, because it's exactly matching that, pulling force. If gravity was acting alone, everything would collapse, right? Everything would attract. All the planets and stars would be pulled together. So this constant keeps that balance we have. You know how small this is? It is 2.8 to the, or 2.8 times 10 to the minus 122. I mean, you can't even understand this number. Very small, right? You've heard of Google, right? You know what Google means? Not the search engine, but the origin of that word. Okay, how big is it?
100 zeros.
Excellent. 100 zeros.
It doesn't end, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's 100 zeros. So it's you could say 10 to the 100, or it's 1 with 100 zeros. That's actually where the word Google came from. You should know this because you use Google all the time. These are exceedingly big numbers. Now, this, like I said, this constant, this cosmological constant, you can't play with it because it's so small. So if you move it a little bit, this universe would be out of control. Now, we know we're expanding, obviously, but we're expanding at a specific speed. And obviously, if you expand it too much or too little, no life would exist. And not to mention other constants. I mean, we have so much. So, I mean, just for the Earth, for example, if the level of oxygen was a little higher, you won't be able to breathe. You'll burn. And if oxygen was low, you can't breathe, you can't live, right? Because you need oxygen to survive. So there are many constants like that. So these are even smaller ones. This one affects the whole universe. Now, like I said, it's really hard to imagine, all of this, and to keep it in mind when you come and you worship, when you pray, for example. But it's always good to keep something like that in your mind, just to imagine how insignificant, how small, and how large the universe is, and what's going on in this universe. It's very intricate and all of that. Now, some people who might think they're clever, they are clever actually, some of them. They say, well, yeah, but it's all a coincidence. I mean, how can you explain a coincidence like that if you have all of these constants and they're very finely tuned, right? Like a coincidence can happen maybe with one constant, with one value, but to have all of these constants to be precisely the way they are. He said, well, that's easy. You can imagine a situation where you have many other verses. So it's not just one universe. There are many alternative or parallel universes, right? And then, if that is the case, there could be thousands or millions of these universes, and one of them happened to be a good one, and that's the one we live in. Ta-da! We solved the problem. That's what they think. So in order to run away from admitting the existence of God, they say, well, if we're going to go by the law of probability, we can imagine many other universes, and one of them escaped this, no life, and there's only one universe in all of these multitudes of universes where you have consciousness, you have life, you have, us, etc. Now, there's one problem with that. I mean, obviously, this is a theory. There's no way you can prove it. There's no way you can travel to the other universe. I mean, we just talked about how big our universe is, right? So there's no way to prove it. Like you cannot really observe it, you cannot really measure it, you can imagine it, but that's all you can do. But a lot of people who propose this or who actually argue with this, they have no idea what the real physicists say about this. And if you're interested, I can give you some names later if you want to research it more. But these people say that for this to be valid theory, the number of alternative universes is such a high number. So we're not talking about like 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. So they kind of estimate 10 to the 56 power. That's how many other universes have to exist for one to be a good one. Again, we can't even prove it or see it, but that's the idea here. Some even say it has to be 10 to the 120th power. So you can see how big that number is. So isn't it much more believable to say that there is a God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created the universe and get it over with? Again, this is a topic for discussion. We can maybe carry on later. Or raise your hand. Now or later? Huh?
You can ask it now.
You really have to?
Rather I wait later.
Yeah, because the only reason I don't mind, but upstairs they don't like the Q&A in the middle of the halaqah. Actually, are we keeping time?
We have 10 minutes. We have 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. So wait 10 minutes, inshallah.
Sorry, I was so interested that I couldn't.
No, I'm happy to hear that. The point is, and I want to stress this importantly, because we're not going to go into the discussion about the existence of God, and this is a different topic. That was not the intent here. I just wanted to bring it as an anecdote, but we can do that later, maybe in a different halaqah or offline. But my point is, just to appreciate this concept or this idea about the universe, that it's not just huge and big, but also it's beautiful and it's designed very well. It's very elegant in design. We can say intelligent design, in fact, because we see signs of intelligence all around us. And again, like I said, this is one of the best proofs for the existence of God. The fact that this universe is not just something random. We see a lot of elegance, we see a lot of intelligence around us. Now some people might say, well, yeah, we understand now a lot about the universe. We understand the laws of the universe. Just keep in mind, just because we're able to come up with a mathematical equation, it does not mean we understand. Understanding is many levels. Like I can easily remember E equal mc squared. What is that? Have you heard of this before? We all should know it, right? So this is a formula to convert between matter and energy. You can convert between the two. So matter can turn into energy, energy can turn into matter. Obviously, one way is much easier than the other, right? We do it all the time. You can bring wood, this is matter, you burn it, you turn it into energy, right? So that's one way to go. But the other way, like I said, is much harder. So we say, well, look, this is a simple formula, but still we don't understand why it happened, who made it happen. So whoever is saying we understand, they only know a little bit. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the Quran, that we have given you only a little of knowledge. Very, very little, in fact. Another thing I want to bring here is the fact that the Quran encourages, because some people say, well, why are you doing this? And why are we bringing science, for example, or any knowledge of the universe? Why is that important to us as Muslims? We say because in the Quran, it encourages us to do that. It encourages us to look around and observe and understand. So somebody comes to you, if a Muslim comes to you and says, you're wasting your time, or this is not Islam, or this is, whatever they say. I don't know what they say. Sometimes you hear a lot of idiotic statements, unfortunately, from some Muslims. You tell him, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانْظُرُوا كَيْفَ بَدَأَ الْخَلْقِ. It's a command. It is a command from Allah. To walk, I mean, if you want to literally translate this verse, it says go around, like get out, get up and go walk on earth. And walking on earth meaning you walk and you observe, you take notes, you do whatever, you take measurements. It says walk on earth and look, use your eyes, use your senses, use your intellect. It says فَانْظُرُوا كَيْفَ بَدَأَ الْخَلْقِ, and see how, I mean listen carefully, it says see how the creation started. What does that mean? Well, khalq could mean the creation of us, so we can study how we started, our origin, right? It also could mean the origin of the universe. Like, you know, the galaxies, the stars, the planets, all the creation around us. We should look and investigate and see how it started. So the Quran is commanding us to go around, to look, to observe, and to think how the universe started. Literally, it's telling us to go and learn about the origins of the universe. And by the way, these days, and for a while now, this concept of the origins is really essential in science. The origin of anything, like I said, the origin of us, the origin of life, the origin of the universe, the visible universe, and so on. So this is in the Quran. It's telling us to do that. It's telling us to go around and investigate. What is also interesting in the Quran, unlike other that might tell you everything what happened, the Quran leaves it to us to investigate. Yes, of course, it tells us some tips. It gives us some tips of what could have happened, what happened, but it doesn't tell us everything. It tells us go and look for yourself. Go and investigate. I mean, for example, it doesn't tell us that the age of the earth is 6,000 years or 7,000 years. It doesn't do that. We have to find out. So some other people might feel they're stuck with a scripture that says something that is totally opposite to science. I want to say that we don't have that problem. As Muslims, we don't have that problem. But we have to open our eyes, we have to open our mind, and we have to read the Quran. This is in the Quran. It's not, so, some people, some religious people might say, well, you should not look, you should not investigate. But the Quran is saying, there's nothing to fear. Where are you going to find out? I mean, if you believe that the Quran is revealed from God, right? There's nothing to be afraid of. There's no reality that you should be afraid of. And in fact, the Quran is encouraging you to go and do that. It's encouraging you to go and find out. Whatever truth you find out, obviously you have to do due diligence, right? You have to do, your investigation has to be correct. It has to be elaborate. It has to be, comprehensive. But at the end, the ultimate truth would not clash with the revealed truth. Revealed truth is in the Quran, and then the truth you find out yourself, those should agree with each other. I mean, at least that's the aim. Now, if there is a perceived disagreement, it could either because you did not understand the revelation correctly, or you did not understand reality correctly. There's a defect somewhere, either in your understanding of revelation or your understanding of reality around you. But at least, like I said, it should be clear to us that the Quran does not stop you, does not discourage you. In fact, it encourages us to do the investigation, to go around and don't be afraid. And like I said, this is not the same. This is not the case in other scriptures.
Time's up.
1 minute? Oh, wow. What can I say in 1 minute? So stressful. I can just say the dua at the end, maybe. No, that's the second segment. We're just talking about the first one. Maybe I can summarize. How about that?
I mean, you've already used the minute now. Just thinking.
Yeah, I know. So in summary, in conclusion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He encourages us to try and at least value and try and give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala His due estimate. Do not underestimate the power of Allah. Do not underestimate the glory and the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We do that all the time, especially when we become a bit heedless. We're not thinking, we're not reflecting on a regular basis. We're so busy, maybe with some, something small, something, pitiful, something of no significance, that we lose track of the bigger picture. Hello. We're not done yet. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is appealing to us, like, at least try, because this is a reality. People do not understand, do not estimate the glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're going to always be in shortage. We're always going to be in deficit. We're not going to be able to really, I can't really focus when you talk. One last minute. I mean, that's hard. Let me try one more time. So this is actually appealing to all of us to try it at least, especially when we stand up in salat. Imagine like who you are and how much you are, how little you are, in fact, in the kingdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this vast, vast, vast universe. I mean, to say we're small is even not, it's not nearly enough, right? And you can think of different ways, like how many atoms the universe has, or how wide the universe and how small we are. And to also think about how finely tuned the universe is, and how intelligent the design of the universe is. And this, inshallah, will at least bring some amount of khushu', some amount of concentration, and some amount of humility, really, some amount of humility. And to appreciate what we have around us. So this is just a small attempt. And the last thing I want to say here is that this is okay. It is, in fact, encouraged by the Quran to do that, to look and to observe and to use your senses, to use whatever faculty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you to do that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, literally, go around, walk and examine and use your mind, use your eyes, and okay, let's stop here. I can't go on. Okay, let's stop and let's do the Q&A. Can we, yeah, please, we're going to turn off the mic from upstairs because they want to do their own Q&A. I guess they don't like ours. And we'll stop the...